Welcome to Living on the Ocean. This is going to be an exciting day. Dawn is back on the move. We have to go to the Dutch bridges and the Dutch locks. We will meet the massive Dutch barges, and they won't move much for our 10-meter wide boat that can't move much either. I'm a bit nervous about this all, and for that I asked extra crew to come along with fenders. It's the people that towed us away from the place where she got so green. But the start is promising. Early in the morning, looking behind, leaving Waterworld, we have a rainbow. And here's our crew, the skipper that towed us with his own boat away from the place where she got so green, Kees, and his two daughters, Berber and Silka. So I just made my first turn, figuring out how this boat works. We're now on the Princess Margriet Canal, and there are the barges. They're massive, and they go fast. I will have to move over as far as I can to the sides, because they're all so deep, they can't move over too far. And with 10 meters wide, that's quite exciting. When those boats pass, there's a lot of water moving around it, and there's a lot of prop wash. And it teaches me quickly how I should be steering Dawn. She's listening to a steering system and a propulsion system very well. And soon we get much more relaxed and we enjoy this beautiful trip with a bit of sunshine now the first rain clouds have gone. The windmills in this typical part of the Netherlands that have kept these green cowfields dry. It's below sea level over here. It wouldn't even exist if there weren't dikes, it would be sea. And when it became land, they digged in canals, they digged out massive lakes. They basically were collecting the peat, which is the leftovers of the plants that used to grow there before and had turned into the soil. And when it was dried, the Dutch called it turf. And these dried blocks of turf made great fuel to keep the houses and the farms warm. And this swampy area in the northern part of the Netherlands, it's even hard to make hard roads up there. They sink away. You cannot move easily very heavy vehicles unless there's specially roads made for it. So most of the transport went over the dikes. But actually heavy transport, the milk, the cheese, the cows, it all went on flat little boats to the canals. And on the dikes on the side of the canals, there's Henk and Henny waiting for us to wave us goodbye. They were with us on the jetty when we were cleaning Dawn from all her green. Very nice people that send us some fantastic pictures of Dawn moving to this man-made Waterworld. Well, we are moving actually higher than the cows and the people living on the other side of the dike, unless they climb on top of it. And then comes our first bridge of the day. We have to dock up alongside the waiting quay, waiting for the bridge to open up, for the train to go over first. No cars, the cars go to a tunnel underneath the canal. So it's not just the cows and the people that are lower than us in this water world. We're actually also moving over the cars that go to the tunnel. And yes, we did it. We went to our first bridge without a scratch. Thank you guys for holding the fenders. There's the bridge. Our 10 meters went to there quite nicely. And I'm gaining more and more confidence. I cannot be as close to the side of this canal as I like to be, because there's a lot of fishermen sitting here on the dike, gliding along on this water. Before we know it, there's bridge number 2 already opening up. So we need to speed up the boat a little bit to make it through this open bridge. Having been through there comes something that's actually a lock, but it's always open. It can be closed when the water levels in the Netherlands reach a certain height. There's more than enough space for us to go through, but we can't afford a little steering mistake and getting our bows in between this concrete construction, going over that just floating beam with floats that are above the waterline in our case. The boats behind us will be ending up like a traffic jam. It's the smallest part of the whole construction where, if I'm correct, they can close it all up. And indeed, there are traffic lights on there as well. They're green, we can go through. Now we're coming to a bigger lake. It's called the IJsselmeer. This mere is a lot of sailing going on normally. It's not as deep. It looks quite big, but it's not a deep lake at all. And the traffic route for boats with a bit more draft is actually to a buoyed channel. with the green and the red buoys passing left and right of us, and boats coming from the other side, also in between those buoys. It can be quite interesting. And some of those boats, they go quite fast. We made good progress, and before we know it, we're on the other side with another bridge at Uitwellingerga. Try that for the first time. There we see something strange. What's that? That's a boat in a container. And that's how we pass bridge after bridge, gliding our floats to this green landscape, looking on top of the farms and the cows from this very funny higher water level. Other boats sail here, and it's very tempted to get our sails up as well, but we can't. It would be quite a sight to see a 10-meter wide trimaran sailing to these canals. We're now getting very close to Lemmer. Lemmer, the place where actually the old sea used to come to the shore. But it's not longer the shore. It's actually now a massive lake with a massive 30-kilometer dam separating it from the real sea. Well, everybody has found their favorite position. The girl sitting on the forebeam in the sun, looking over the lake, and the man standing in the cockpit on the boat, enjoying this fantastic trip. And then we come to the last lake, Grote Brekken. Goodbye small waterways of the north of the Netherlands, Friesland. We are gonna go out at a lock at Lemmer, to where you belong, to much more water than those small narrow canals. Having docked up on the remwerk, basically the docking key for waiting for the lock to open and first the other boats to come out, we finally can go in. And this is a very tricky lock. There's actually floating pipes on the side that are quite low, and since our amas, our floats, are actually just above the waterline, they can easily go on top of there and really damage the bottom of them. But it all works out with a great crew, and we managed to tie up in there, wait for the water levels to adjust to what's on the other side of the door, sometimes up, sometimes down, and then the lock opens. And it feels like we're getting air. It feels like dawn is back to freedom. And that's how we on engine sail out of Lemmer up to the open waters of the IJsselmeer, just there where the windmills are on the right side. We need to go around this breakwater and it will open up. The water here is always a color green. I've never seen it blue. It must be the sand. It's actually quite shallow, and there are lots of buoy channels for the bigger boats. Well, our great crew that helped us to all the bridges and the locks are in position for the wind and the waves that we are gonna meet on what once was the Zuiderzee, now called the IJsselmeer, since they made a dam. We have a force 5 on the nose, and there's quite a choppy waves, very short behind each other in the shallow waters, and it makes Dawn for the first time slamming up and down into the waves, even sometimes splashing over her massive high beams. And she absolutely seemed to enjoy it. The wind is northwest and it's coming straight from the real salt sea. She must be smelling it again. And with great leaps she's just going over those waves, heading towards salt water again. And me? What was I saying this first time I saw her going to the waves so well? Let's hear it in real.
Yes, motoring upwind in a force 4-5, 50 to 20 knots of wind, shaking everything, making sure that all this dirt in the fuel tanks will come loose. Let's hope it's not too much and the filters can handle it.
She's doing absolutely wonderful, sliding her slim hulls to those waves. And she's rocking a bit, and I check out the rigging quite well. It looks like she's absolutely solid. The only thing moving is obvious the running backstays that we haven't tightened up very well and some of the lazy jack wires. But the standing rigging and the mast ain't moving a bit. And with case on the helm I get an opportunity to go forwards. And just see how the bows are slicing through the water. Just to see how everything functions on this boat, how she loves to go through it. It just makes me very, very happy. Dawn, you're a fantastic Trimaran. And when the evening starts to fall, at the end of this long day, we reach Stavoren, the very famous old sailing village that traded all over the world. This little village became so rich as one of the big VOC villages in the Netherlands. This tiny little country, the Netherlands, created the VOC, the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie in Dutch, or in English the United Eastern Indian Company. And I'm definitely ashamed for the way these people have been treating other people in countries all over the world. But how could this little country fighting the sea every single day, being below sea level, and fighting massive countries like Great Britain, Spain, Portugal, Germany and France? Where did those people get those boats from? They didn't have 10, they didn't have 20, they didn't have 100. The VOC owned over its total period more than 3,000 boats. 3,000! Can you think about that? Where were they built? There were no factories. Well, the Dutch actually created a factory, and they used their windmills. Every single windmill was set up to produce parts for boats, like a production plant. If you wanted this part of a boat, you went to that windmill. If you wanted to build that part or needed it, it was produced at that windmill. They were sawing the wood. They were bringing the products. 3,000 boats. That's the part I'm proud of, the way the Dutch set up, the way to build boats for their fleet. It's the village of a VOC woman that owned a massive fleet, the woman from Stavoren. And she had one of her skippers sailing the world for valuable treasure, and he came back with his great grain, a shipload full of grain. And she hated it, and she was so angry that she had it all thrown into the sea. And somebody said, this will reduce you to poverty. A massive storm came not shortly after and wiped out her complete fleet, and she became a beggar. And now, 9 hours later, just before it's gonna get dark, there's Trimaran Dawn in this famous village, Stavoren, in Friesland, the north of the Netherlands. Now there is a great woman over here. She let her 2 daughters, Silka and Berber, come with us, and her husband Kees, to help me steering, docking, holding fenders and going to the bridges. But thank you so much, Trudy, for helping us out and for letting your family help me on Trimaran Dawn to bring her back to salt water. What a great crew we had, and how happy Cheryl and I were that she was out. We ended it all with a great meal. We had a fantastic time when the evening fell. And after an extra day rest from our first trip, we just took her out the next day, early in the morning at dawn. And what a fantastic dawn it was. Beautiful rising of the sun behind Stavoren, which we already left. It's just now me and Cheryl on the boat. Our first time together, sailing her over the IJsselmeer towards the lock that will bring her into salt water. No more bridges, just a couple of hours to cross. And Cheryl, her first fantastic time steering, with a big smile, steering this massive 10-meter Trimaran. The clouds and the sun shining over the water gives us a fantastic spectacle and is a beautiful trip. And actually before we really realize it, we already can see the land on the other side, the loch. And there we are, in the loch, the last loch from fresh water. Just close the doors and open those ones in front of us. And she be there, she will be in the salt water, and a lot more than just salt water. It's called the Waddenzee and it dries out at many sandbanks. The doors are open, no more bridge, no more lock, till America, till wherever. She's free again, she's back on the ocean, she's back in the sea. I just love the smell of the sea, and I'm absolutely sure Dawn is taking very deep breaths in of this. This has been so long ago for her. A boat that was created to race on the Atlantic, being stuck away between trees in a beautiful spot, but getting so green. Now she's free, free to enjoy it again. This sea in the north of the Netherlands can be very tricky with its sandbanks. You could very easily run aground if you don't stay in the channels and you don't know where to go. The fishermen know it exactly and they catch fish here. And right next to us they pull up their nets. Like they want to say, you may look wide with your 10 meters, but look at us. It's a fantastic area with lots of currents and sandbank and seals and fish. Many people come here to enjoy their recreation holidays. And there in the distance is a port specially made for Dawn with her colours. A Dutch naval port, and our grey fits in perfectly. But the harbour will not open up till tomorrow for us. So we have to stay outside on the sandbank to check underneath the boat. And for that you need a strong woman that can lift her over a bit. And the tide helps Cheryl out a little bit and she stays laying there beautifully dried out with a very narrow middle hull and a flying float. I find it a beautiful sight to see her laying there like this, and I can't wait to go and inspect how she looks underwater. Her bow thruster, it all actually looks much better and much less grown on than I expected. The seawater inlet for the engine looks much better than I thought. I knew water would come through, else the engine would not have had cooling water, but I expected much more growth on her. And also, her propeller looks quite good. The movable propeller blades from the variable pitch, but there's a little plug missing in there. Well, the other thing missing is obvious, the anodes, but that's quite obvious after 15 years. We spent quite a time walking around her and checking her out. And before we know it, the water starts to come back up and the sun starts to set. Another day has gone by. And soon, Dawn will be floating again. Tomorrow we will go to Den Helder. And the next morning we are on our way again to Den Helder. This navy port with its grey navy vessels, where we fit in so nice. There's actually more than navy vessels there. It's also a big supply port for oil rigs and vessels that can land helicopters on their bow with massive noses to break to the North Sea waves. An oil rig is laying parked next to a lock again. We weren't gonna go back to locks, but we're gonna put her behind this lock for a very important mission. Having passed the lock, we're now in Willemsoord. This was the old Navy harbour. And the whole area has turned into a national heritage. All the old boats, all the sea-going history is all assembled here in this fantastic place. The old cranes, the old ways they used to dock the boats. Lifeguard boats, submarines, All kind of things from the Navy and from the Dutch shipping can be found in Willemsoord. And there is Dawn. And behind Dawn, on the other jetty, you could say it's her sister. Trimaran Honky-Dory, the boat with which I made my first solo crossing, actually 2, towards the Caribbean and back to Europe in 2016. We got a beautiful spot over here for something very important that I really want to get done now very fast. But before we want a little rest, we gotta back to salt water. We celebrate with a fantastic dinner. We feel so happy. It all works out so much better than we expected. And tomorrow will be the day for the big job for which we bought special equipment. Professional climbing gear that we specially got to climb this mast, to get all the green of it and to inspect it anywhere possible. And I go up 3 days. Every hour I'm in that mast, hanging up there, going up and down with buckets, with scrubs, with cleaning wipes, with tools. She needs to get clean before those beautiful, very good looking sails can go on her without getting green as well. It takes more work than I thought, but the result is also better, and she's in much better condition than I expected as well. So I'm very satisfied with the job. I'm so looking forward to get the sails up now, which will be in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed watching this one. The next one is gonna be very excited. The sails will go up again on Trimaran Dawn. Thank you for watching Living on the Ocean, and especially thanks to Kees, Trudy, Silke and Berber for their fantastic help bringing Dawn back to saltwater. Thanks to all my subscribers, you've been a great encouragement to continue this series. And thanks for your comments and your likes. I hope I will see you in the next episode.